Late one summer night, in a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of a bustling city, an older gentleman named Richard found himself enveloped by heavy sleep. He had returned home from a long shift at the local factory just a few hours earlier. Setting his dinner plate in the sink before collapsing into bed, exhaustion pulled him into deep slumber almost instantly. Little did he know that a small electrical fault was slowly smoldering in the corner of his living room near an overloaded power strip. For several hours, a tiny spark, hidden beneath tangled cords, went unnoticed. All the while, Richard's pitbull, Bella, dozed in the hallway, keeping her usual nightly vigil near her owner's door. At around 2 in the morning, Bella's ears flicked upward, her sensitive nose twitched. The sharp odor of burning plastic slithered into her nostrils, tugging her from the half-doze that most dogs drift in and out of during the night. She stood up, patting softly on the worn carpet, and let out a low whine. Richard didn't stir. Suddenly, a small flame licked up the side of the wall, illuminating the living room in a sinister glow. Within seconds, smoke began to billow out, drifting under the door toward Bella's keen senses. She barked loudly, an urgent cry that tore through the silent house. When Richard still didn't wake, Bella pressed her paws against the bedroom door, scratching and barking with a desperation born from instinct and loyalty. Finally, Richard snapped awake, confused by the commotion. Smoke now clung to the air, forming a haze that stung his eyes and throat the moment he sat up. Bella's bark grew more frantic, echoing off the walls. Richard jumped out of bed and yanked open the door to find his dog whining, frantically pushing at him with her muzzle. He could smell the acrid scent of burning plastic, and through the hallway he could see an orange glow in the living room. It all happened in a blur. Bella dashed forward, then whirled around as if telling him, "Follow me." He stumbled behind her, half in a panic, trying to figure out the source of the smoke. By now, the flames had crawled up the wall. The room was thick with black smoke. Bella barked again, forcing Richard to remember the basic fire safety rule: get low and get out. He crouched down, feeling the heat intensify by the second, and made his way through the swirling smoke to the front door. Bella at his side. Once outside, Richard inhaled the cool night air, his lungs grateful for the relief. Bella stood close, her eyes locked on him as though verifying he was truly safe. In the distance, neighbors began flicking on porch lights. Someone called 911, and moments later, the wail of sirens sliced through the darkness. Firefighters arrived to extinguish the blaze before it could consume the entire house. But the damage was extensive. Still, Richard was alive, and he credited that fact to Bella's vigilance. In the days that followed, the local news picked up the story, an unlikely fire alarm, in the form of a pit bull who had saved her owner's life. Interviewers came by to speak with Richard, who described Bella as his guardian angel. He'd always known she was a sweetheart, but he never anticipated that her protective instincts would one day save him from a potentially fatal house fire. Stories like Richard and Bella's are more common than people might assume. Time and again, pit bulls have demonstrated an extraordinary aptitude for detecting danger. Their keen sense of smell and hearing, combined with a deep bond to their humans, often leads them to sound the alarm when things go wrong. One reason for this heightened awareness could be traced back to the breed's origins as strong, loyal working dogs. They remain attuned to the shifts in their environment. Whether it's the odor of smoke, a suspicious noise outside, or even changes in their owner's physical condition. These traits aren't unique to pit bulls alone, but pit bulls frequently excel in crisis situations due to their combination of athletic ability, loyalty, and, contrary to popular belief, a high sensitivity to human emotions. Medical emergencies are another area in which pit bulls have proven themselves surprisingly adept. Consider the case of Tanya, a young woman diagnosed with epilepsy, whose pit bull, Duke, developed an uncanny knack for sensing oncoming seizures. Tanya first noticed this ability on a mild afternoon when she was home alone, folding laundry. Duke had been snoozing lazily on the couch. Suddenly, he jumped off, trotted over to her, and started whining, pawing at her leg. She initially brushed him aside, assuming he just wanted attention. But then she felt a strange, familiar sensation, a tingling along her scalp that signaled a seizure was imminent. She rushed to the sofa to lie down safely. And just moments later, the seizure struck. Duke stayed by her side the entire time. When the convulsions passed, he nudged her face as though checking her vitals, then went and barked at the front door. If someone had been within earshot, they would have known Tanya needed help. After that day, Tanya began monitoring Duke's behavior closely. Sure enough, whenever she was about to have a seizure, Duke showed signs of distress. He paced, whined, and tried to steer her to a safe spot. In several instances, he tugged gently on her sleeve as if guiding her toward the sofa or bed. Tanya mentioned her experience to her neurologist, who wasn't entirely surprised. Some dogs, regardless of breed, can pick up on minute changes in body chemistry or scent that precede medical events like seizures or diabetic shocks. Yet what stood out was Duke's consistency. He never failed to alert her. Family and friends started calling him her guardian angel in fur, a phrase that mirrored how Richard spoke of Bella after his house fire. Beyond fires and seizures, there are also moving accounts of Pitbulls stepping up in the face of sudden accidents like car crashes. Take, for example, a freeway incident in which a young man named Carlos was driving with his Pitbull, Max, riding in the passenger seat. It was early evening, and rain-slick roads made for dangerous travel. A speeding SUV lost control, swerving across lanes and slamming into the driver's side of Carlos's car. The impact was severe. Both vehicles spun out until Carlos's car finally collided with the guardrail. Carlos, disoriented and injured, struggled to move. Adrenaline and shock coursed through his body. Max, momentarily stunned, quickly regained his bearings. He licked Carlos's face and whined. Realizing his owner was immobilized, Max began barking furiously, attracting attention from other motorists who had pulled over to assist. According to witnesses, the Pitbull then tried pushing open the partially dented car door with his paws. Unable to dislodge it, Max turned back to Carlos, as if urging him to hold on. Moments later, an off-duty paramedic arrived and pried the damaged door open. In the ambulance ride that followed, Carlos clutched Max's paw, the dog's unwavering presence providing a strange but crucial sense of comfort. When Carlos later recounted the crash, he praised Max for raising enough of a ruckus to draw people to the scene quickly. The paramedic attested that he heard Max's frantic barking even before he noticed the twisted metal of the wreck. The dog's immediate actions likely sped up the arrival of help. Meanwhile, social media got a hold of the story, and comments flooded in about how Pitbulls aren't always the menace they're made out to be. Some individuals were skeptical, but many others chimed in with their own experiences of Pitbulls showing calm bravery during emergencies. One of the most compelling ways these stories gained traction and authenticity is through direct interviews with the owners themselves. A local journalist named Jessica specialized in community-based reporting and had the chance to sit down with both Richard and Carlos to capture their experiences firsthand. Jessica had a personal interest in canine stories. Her own family owned a rescue pit bull that had proven to be a great companion. When she heard about Bella saving Richard from a house fire, she felt compelled to give voice to a narrative that often goes unheard. She visited Richard's home, a place still bearing the scars of the recent fire. Sections of the living room wall were stripped down to the studs, and the smell of smoke lingered in the air. Bella, wearing a bright pink collar, padded up to Jessica calmly, tail wagging. "She's still the same sweet girl she's always been," Richard said, running a hand over Bella's head. His eyes teared up a bit as he recounted the night of the fire in detail, how Bella's frantic barking and scratching at his bedroom door saved him from potentially lethal smoke inhalation. He recalled the way she refused to leave his side, even after firefighters arrived. In a trembling voice, he said, "I owe her my life. She's not just a dog, she's my best friend." Days later, Jessica interviewed Carlos in his apartment. Max was sprawled on the floor, still sporting a shaved patch on his side where the vet had treated minor cuts from the accident. Carlos described the car crash with a note of lingering shock in his voice. He'd replayed the event over and over in his mind, convinced that if Max hadn't barked so furiously, it might have taken precious minutes longer for anyone to come to his aid. In a collision that severe, every second mattered. Carlos pointed out a homemade ramp he'd built so Max could climb onto the bed more easily. A small way to give back some of the comfort Max had provided in the aftermath of the crash. "He's more than just my dog," Carlos said. "He's my protector, My partner in life. I can't imagine how things would have gone if he wasn't there. These personal narratives add a layer of humanity that statistics or generic media coverage often fail to capture. Interviews reveal the emotional bond between dog and owner, bonds that are especially poignant when tested by life-threatening circumstances. They also highlight a shared theme in many of these rescue situations. The Pitbull's initial reaction is to sound an alarm or call for help rather than to confront a threat aggressively. This counters the assumption some people hold that Pitbulls, when stressed or startled, resort to violence. Instead, these dogs often show a remarkable capacity to remain level-headed, focusing on saving their person rather than lashing out. Emergency responders and medical professionals have also offered input on why Pitbulls can be so effective in crises. A paramedic who witnessed a Pitbull alert a family to a grandmother's stroke described the dog's agitation, pacing and whining, long before the woman realized something was off. The paramedic explained that dogs might detect subtle shifts in scent or behavior that humans can't perceive. For Pitbulls, their strong bond to their owners and high emotional awareness can make them particularly attuned to these changes. They not only notice something's wrong, but they also feel compelled to do something about it. They don't flee or freeze, they engage. This aspect of engagement was echoed by Fire Chief Tom Alvarez, who once encountered a Pitbull leading him through a smoke-filled bedroom toward a small child hidden under a bed. "We were doing our standard search, but there was thick smoke. Almost zero visibility. Suddenly, this Pitbull tugs at my turnout gear and starts pulling me deeper into the room. I followed, and sure enough, there was a kid we hadn't seen. That dog refused to leave until I picked the kid up. Then it followed me right back out to safety. I've never forgotten that," Chief Alvarez said. While not every Pitbull will remain calm during such a traumatic event, the fact that some do speaks volumes about their capacity for courage and devotion. Pitbull enthusiasts often talk about the breed's heart, referring to a blend of loyalty, emotional intelligence, and readiness to stand by loved ones in dire situations. Yet it would be misleading to imply that every Pitbull can or will act heroically under pressure. Individual temperament, upbringing, and training play significant roles. A poorly socialized or abused dog, regardless of breed, may react unpredictably when faced with a crisis. Conversely, a Pitbull raised in an environment that nurtures trust and stability is more likely to step up in a moment of need. Given these nuances, many trainers emphasize that a dog's heroism is largely shaped by the bond it shares with its owner. Consistent, positive interactions build a foundation of trust. Through training, the dog learns to stay calm under stress and to look to the owner, or another familiar human, for guidance. Over time, that dog might develop the confidence to handle emergencies by barking for help, trying to nudge a person out of harm's way, or even seeking out firefighters or paramedics. It's not as though Pitbulls have a genetic blueprint for rescuing people from fires or car crashes. But their predisposition for loyalty and strength can be molded into life-saving behaviors under the right circumstances. For those intrigued by the idea of Pitbulls as potential lifesavers, experts recommend focusing on core training techniques. Obedience commands like, come, stay, and leave it, can help a dog remain steady in chaotic environments. Desensitization to loud noises, such as sirens or alarms, can reduce panic in real emergencies. Handlers also work on reinforcing calm responses to stress. Some advanced programs even introduce dogs to simulation exercises, although these are more common for search and rescue canines. Still, a well-socialized Pitbull with strong obedience skills has a higher chance of acting effectively during a crisis than a dog unaccustomed to new stimuli. One particularly striking story involved a Pitbull named Roxy, owned by a retired firefighter named Dan. Dan had served on the force for almost 3 decades and had personally witnessed the unpredictability of emergencies. When he rescued Roxy from a shelter, he recognized a spark of intelligence in her eyes. Over the next year, Dan taught her basic commands and gradually exposed her to various controlled stressors, sirens on TV, mock drills where Dan pretended to trip and fall, and visits to busy parks with lots of commotion. Roxy would occasionally exhibit signs of anxiety, trembling, whining, but Dan calmly guided her through each situation, rewarding her for moments of calm behavior. It paid off in an extraordinary way when Dan himself experienced a medical crisis one morning. He had just finished breakfast when he felt a piercing headache and suddenly lost balance. Collapsing to the floor, he realized he was struggling to breathe, a symptom that hinted at something more severe than a routine fainting spell. Roxy, in the next room, heard him fall. She ran in, nudged him repeatedly, and when she saw he couldn't stand, she began barking at the front door. Neighbors later told Dan they'd never heard such an urgent sound from Roxy before. Her insistent barking drew the attention of a passerby who then peered through the window, saw Dan on the floor, and called 911. Paramedics arrived swiftly, diagnosing what appeared to be a severe stroke in progress. Dan was rushed to the hospital, where doctors began life-saving treatments. The medical team later credited the swift response for preventing long-term paralysis. In Dan's view, Roxy's alarm cut precious minutes off the rescue time. In a follow-up interview, Dan spoke about the irony of spending his career saving others, only to be saved by his Pitbull. He said it was Roxy's training that made the biggest difference. She wasn't afraid of loud noises or strangers. So barking loudly and drawing someone to the door came naturally in that moment of crisis. The love and stability Dan had provided were, in turn, reflected back by Roxy's unwavering determination to get him help. Stories like these gain further credibility when they're corroborated by third parties, neighbors, paramedics, fire chiefs, or even security camera footage. More and more people are capturing these events on smartphones or home security systems, providing undeniable evidence that a Pitbull indeed took deliberate action. These visuals often show the dog pacing or barking, sometimes even clawing at doors, doing everything in its power to alert someone. Public reaction to such footage is typically a mixture of astonishment and admiration, especially from those who had once believed Pitbulls were too unpredictable or dangerous to be trusted as family dogs. Nevertheless, it is crucial to underscore the importance of responsible ownership. When Pitbulls are neglected, abused, or trained to be aggressive, the outcomes can be tragic. But when they're raised with kindness, discipline, and positive exposure to various situations, many Pitbulls rise to occasions that demand courage. Breed alone doesn't guarantee heroism or aggression, it's the environment, training, and individual personality that shape a dog's behavior. Thus, while we celebrate hero Pitbulls, we also remind potential owners that these dogs require time, patience, and resources to thrive. In discussing these dramatic rescue scenarios, it's easy to overlook the quieter ways Pitbulls protect their owners. Some provide emotional support for people suffering from anxiety or PTSD. Others help their owners maintain healthier lifestyles by encouraging daily walks and exercise. Many are simply watchful companions who greet their humans at the door with wagging tails, offering a sense of security in an often chaotic world. The truth is, rescue can take many forms. A Pitbull that intuitively knows how to comfort a person in distress is providing a different kind of life-saving service. One that might not make the headlines but is deeply significant to the individual who experiences it. The more people hear about Pitbulls like Bella, Duke, Max, or Roxy, the harder it becomes to cling to blanket stereotypes. Yes, Pitbulls have physical power. Yes, they require attentive training and responsible handling. But many of them also have a well of empathy and loyalty that can quite literally be the difference between life and death. When a Pitbull rouses an owner during a fire, alerts neighbors to a car accident, or senses a seizure before it happens, we're witnessing the fruition of countless small moments of trust built up over time. As journalist Jessica continued her series on canine heroes, she noted that the real lesson isn't about blindly idolizing one breed. Rather, it's about acknowledging that dogs, like humans, are shaped by love, environment, and purpose. Pitbulls, so often subjected to negative labels, have repeatedly shown they can excel in protective and life-saving roles. Their stories challenge society to look beyond headlines and into the hearts of dogs that refuse to abandon their humans in moments of peril. For those who are new to the breed or considering adopting a Pitbull, these accounts can serve as inspiration. Watching or reading about Pitbulls that have saved their owners from burning houses or medical emergencies might push someone to learn more about positive reinforcement training, breed-specific legislation issues, or volunteer programs that pair rescue Pitbulls with veterans. In this way, each tale of heroism becomes a small but meaningful step in erasing misconceptions. One successful rescue can ripple out, changing minds, spurring action, and giving Pitbulls a chance to prove just how profound their loyalty can be. Richard still lives in his repaired home, where the faint smell of smoke has finally dissipated. Bella remains his constant companion, a bit more silver around the muzzle these days but still vigilant. Carlos continues to drive the city roads with Max, though he's more cautious in bad weather. Tanya and Duke navigate life with epilepsy, secure in the knowledge that Duke's early warning system has significantly improved her quality of life. And Dan, the retired firefighter, enjoys his days with Roxy, each one a gift made possible by her swift intervention. Across these different backdrops, house fires, car accidents, medical crises, the unifying thread is a Pitbull stepping up to save the day. Time after time, these dogs break down barriers by displaying unwavering loyalty in the face of adversity. There is no guarantee that every Pitbull will heroically intervene in an emergency. Just as there's no guarantee any dog of any breed will. But the evidence is clear. Given a stable environment, proper training, and deep bonds with their humans, Pitbulls can indeed become unlikely but extraordinary lifesavers. In a world too often dominated by fear-based narratives, these true-life examples provide a refreshing reminder that empathy and devotion can surface in the most challenging circumstances. The hero Pitbull stories are, in essence, stories about the transformative power of love. They speak to our collective desire to believe in goodness, even in unexpected forms, and to champion the potential for compassion that resides within all living beings.